Welcome to Fantasy Football Today Express. Let's talk about quarterbacks who could be on the rise. NFL Draft is 1 week away, April 24th, and we'll have coverage for you after the draft ends. We'll recap every day of the NFL Draft, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, into the following morning. I'm Adam Azer with Jamie Eisenberg on FFT Express. So we're looking for quarterbacks whose value might rise if their teams draft wisely in the NFL Draft. Who stands out to you?
I actually wanted to bring this up on the Wednesday show. I didn't know which way you were going with it. We kind of, sped through it quickly, but unless I'm wrong, Dave had Justin Fields as a veteran that could be negatively impacted by the NFL draft because of the Jets potentially drafting a quarterback.
Yeah.
I see it the other way. I think that the Jets are in play to take maybe Tyler Warren or to add to their receiving core. As it stands right now, it's a very incomplete receiving core. Remember, they just lost their tight end, for example, in Tyler Conklin, if you still consider him a big playmaker for them. So they're going to add pieces, and they paid Justin Fields to be their starter. They're talking about Justin Fields being their starter. They may at some point add a quarterback. I don't think it's going to be at 7. So if they give some playmakers to Justin Fields, while we know he's not going to necessarily enhance them, they may enhance him to the point where a guy that's been a consistent 20-point per game producer whenever he's gotten the chance to start could get that much better. So I think Justin Fields can benefit. I think Drake May significantly can benefit, if they add some pass catchers, because we know this is a receiving core that's very complete. Stephon Diggs isn't necessarily the answer to making them, dramatically better. Trevor Lawrence, losing 2 guys this offseason and Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, I think they're going to add some playmakers. They're definitely in play, whatever you think about it, for Ashton Genty at 5. But if they don't and they trade down, and maybe they add a receiver or 2 throughout the course of the process, especially early, that's going to make Trevor Lawrence better, because right now, just throwing to Brian Thomas, while it's great, I don't think he necessarily helps make Trevor Lawrence better by himself. So you just look at some of these receiving cores that need help, and, those are a couple that stand out to me.
Yeah, I just wonder how many wide receivers can really have a huge impact for their quarterback this year. I would say Hunter, but we all know, just don't know how many snaps he's going to play. Plus, we're going to boost Joe Flacco. Maybe, he's like QB 20 or something. I don't know. But McMillan really stands out. So where do you want Ted McMillan to go as it relates to a quarterback?
I mean, I would love it for New England, for a team that, could use anything really to, step up that receiving core, So Drake May, again, you look at it, he would have been, over a 17-game season, had he been the starter, he would have been 3rd in rushing yards at the position, just shy of 700 yards. So he gives you that potential. I know you talked about this a lot. He's not going to have as many yards per carry, most likely. But still, he's going to run. And he did a nice job with the limited weapons around him. So Josh McDaniels, I think, is an upgraded offense coordinator. And hopefully we see, some pieces to help him. So McMillan there would be, ideal. I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders, add a receiver, clearly, so again, similar to Joe Flacco, I don't think many people are getting excited about Geno Smith. They're hopefully in a little bit of a different category, but similar in terms of, I think, what their fantasy value would be. So Smith would benefit with another pass catcher, knowing that Brock Bowers is a stud and Jacoby Myers is a nice receiver. I just don't know if he's the type of guy you want to say is your 1A. So, getting another piece there. And I also think, you look at, I remember who it was, if it was Chris Trapasso or somebody else that we had on, or another mock draft you were reading, Matthew Golden to the Cardinals. I think it was Traps who had him there.
I think so.
That would be great for Kyler Murray. Just another, playmaker on the outside. It would suck for Marvin Harrison and potentially Trey McBride. But, again, just putting another piece around Kyler Murray, who we know doesn't necessarily support those guys to what we like individually as a group. But, again, you upgrade over Michael Wilson or, Greg Dortch, whatever they have there behind Marvin Harrison. It's a nice plus.
Yeah, I don't think the Patriots are going to take McMillan 4th, but I do think they could trade down. So if somehow the Patriots end up with McMillan, I think that would be my favorite scenario. Or if the Cowboys end up with McMillan, I want to talk about the Cowboys in a little bit. We will be right back on FFT Express. Yeah, the Cowboys are definitely in need of a wide receiver. Would it make a big difference for you for Dak Prescott if they took a wide receiver in the 1st round?
To an extent, I think he's going to be one of the more fascinating high-end QB2s because we've seen him produce at a very high level. We know what he was as recently as 2023. It's a clear coaching change that, may or may not benefit him. And what I mean by that is it's a guy that was on the staff, so we'll run some of the similar concepts that Mike McCarthy did, but clearly a different voice and a different, play calling, or different play calling. So I think in terms of Dak getting another option in the passing game would clearly help. But a lot of what he did in 2023 was CD Lamb being an absolute stud, which I think he will be. Jake Ferguson having a productive season. Well, he's easily able to do that again. And then it was really just Brandon Cook scoring touchdowns. Well, Jalen Tolbert can do that, so um, it'll help, but it won't move the needle for me to put Dak back in the top 12.
Bryce Young, last 3 games of the season, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions, 3 rushing touchdowns, 31 points against the Cardinals, 21 points at the Bucks, 42 points at Atlanta. And he did that while averaging about 29 to 30 pass attempts per game. Any scenario where you could see Bryce Young maybe getting close to, QB 18 or something like that in the rankings, where he's now a backup we consider taking?
He's definitely in the conversation now to be a backup you consider taking, but he's at the back end of that group. So can he get to QB 18? I don't know. I don't think I'll rank him that high. I just don't know like where the ceiling is for him fantasy wise, so it's still a very incomplete group, in terms of having a superstar. So is McMillan that type of guy? Maybe. I don't know if Golden's that type of guy in terms of, what he could be from a high-end fantasy producer, at least right away. So you're asking, I think, Liggett to take a big step forward, Thielen to still be, playing at a high level at his age, maybe Jalen Coker, becoming a little bit more of a playmaker. We like Jatavian Sanders as a, potential sleeper at that position. But I just don't know if he's going to be better than a lot of those guys that are going to be ranked in that range. Like if you're telling me right now, Cam Ward versus Bryce Young, I'm taking Cam Ward, fantasy-wise.
Yeah, we just haven't seen that much from Young. We obviously saw big improvement, but not exactly gaudy numbers. So it's but then again, he just doesn't really have any playmakers in his receiving core, right? You want a guy who can take a slant and run an extra 30 yards or something like that. And there's just that doesn't not
could be Golden.
It's not, yeah, right. No, I'm just saying right now on Carolina, it doesn't exist. Yep. So yeah, I'd love to see them. Anything else? I mean, do you have Josh Allen as QB1?
I have Lamar Jackson as QB1.
If the Bills draft, I don't know, maybe Golden will fall, but they draft Golden or Burden or something like that, would you move him up?
No, I just think that they're 1 and 1A, so I'm not going to fight anybody that has Allen over Jackson. I just think what Jackson is doing right now, the fact that he is continuing to, I don't want to say improve as a passer, showcase his skills as a passer, and what the offense under Todd Monken has allowed him to do. MVP 2 years ago, arguably could have been MVP again. Still going to be stupid. Still could have been. Still is. One of the best running quarterbacks. I think Allen continues to, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but just regress as a rusher, run less. And throws a little bit more. That's not going to hurt him, but I think just Lamar Jackson's ceiling, in my opinion, right now remains slightly higher. So they're going to go back to back. Burrow's up there, obviously. Jane Daniels up there, obviously, and Jalen Hurts. There's a clear top 5, and there's going to be probably a few people that have a different order, a weird order, of maybe Burrow 1 or Hurts 1, because of what he does with the tush push. For me, it's Jackson and Allen at the top, and I love what they do right now. So you tell me Lamar Jackson loses Mark Andrews, I'm not going to flinch. You tell me Josh Allen gets Luther Burden or Matthew Golden at 31, wherever they are, I'm not going to change my opinion, really.
All right. That's Jamie Eisenberg. I'm Adam Azer. This is FFT Express. Have a great weekend, everybody. Talk to you next week.